Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on wherever you are joining in from. Thank you so much for joining this session. So in today's session, we're going to look into how you can enrich your data with Azure Cognitive Services and Power BI. But before we dive in, a little bit about myself. I'm Rashika. I am a Gold Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador, and I'm also working as a data scientist at Doximo and a junior team lead at Major League Hacking. All of my contact details are in the screen, so I'll be more than happy to have an extended discussion or take in any follow-ups in either of the platforms. So feel free to reach out to me. So let's get started. So today we are going to look into two most fascinating areas of data, one being Azure Cognitive Services and next being the Power BI. Azure Cognitive Services are basically the cloud services provided by Microsoft, which helps you to hone the power of AI and ML without having any ML expertise. And Power BI is a business intelligence tool that helps you to manage, load your data, and then analyze it to gain some meaningful insights out of your data and to gain some meaningful insights out of your data. So we're going to see how these two powerful platforms works in hand, and how you can derive some value out of it by merging the functionality of these two. So Azure Cognitive Services are now integrated as a part of a Power BI under the premium license. So if you have premium license, then you can have easy access to cognitive services. At the moment, it just supports for cognitive services, which are tag images, extract key phrases, detect languages, and score sentiment. And all these cool functionalities are something you can directly access if you have premium license of Power BI. So just to dive in a little deeper on what each of the cognitive services are. So tag images are a cognitive services that under the hood makes calls to the Azure computer vision. So you, as an input, you pass in your image and you get a tagged value as an output. So it's going to compare your image to the 2000 objects that it's pre-trained in, and it's going to give you the tagged output together with the confidential scores. And then we have the extract key phrases. So extract key phrases is under the hood works under text analysis model. So again, herein you give in your text as an input, and then it extracts some meaningful insights. It extracts like key phrases from your text and gives that as an output. When it comes to detect language, again, you give in a text as an input, and then and as an output, it detects what type of language it is and gives you that as an output. I believe at the moment it supports around 120 languages, so that's pretty cool. And finally, we have score sentiment. So what it does is, again, it takes in a text as an input, analyzes it, and then gives you the sentiment of the text as an output. So in today's session, we are going to see how we can use all the cognitive services and how we can consume them. Together with that, we're going to look a little into what other AI capabilities that Power BI has integrated. So without much ado, let's dive into the demo. Let me quickly share my screen. So currently I am in Power BI services. So first then, let me start by creating a workspace. Well, let me just name this workspace as news demo, because the data that I'm using is a news popularity data that was grabbed from UCI machine learning repository. So like I've mentioned, the Azure Cognitive Services that are integrated within Power BI are only available in premium license. So what I want to do is I want to make this workspace, the mode of this workspace under premium per user license. And I am going to go with default settings here, and let me just hit save the workspace. So it's going to take a couple of seconds to create the workspace. So workspace in Power BI is basically you can say it's kind of like a container that contains all of your dashboards, reports, the data flows, and everything in between. So if you want to containerize all the things together, you do that in workspaces, and it just makes it really easy for you to share those contents with your team and collaborate together. So at the moment, since I just created the workspace, I don't have anything. So let me just add in a content. So what I want to do is I want to create data flows. And just to give you a quick insight on what data flow is. In Power BI, data flow is basically a collection of tables, and basically you can use it to manage your table, manage your data, and transform your data. So let me just add in a new table here. So again, taking a couple of seconds to load in. So there are a lot of ways we can import data from. So there are a lot of data sources that you can use, be it Excel workbook, your folders, JSON file, PDF, and a lot more. But for this demo, I am going to go with a good old CSV file. So I already have that loaded in my GitHub. So I'm just going to grab the URL and then just paste it in here and hit next. So it's going to take a couple of seconds to load in the data. And while it's loading the data, let me just give you a quick insight on what the data is. So in the data, we have not the best formatting here, but in the data, we have like title, headline, source, and topic. So title refers to the news title, headline refers to the headline of the news. A source refers to the source from where the news was grabbed, and topic refers to what topic the news covers. So we have this as a data, and there we go. So it seems like the data is loaded. For some reason, Power BI didn't recognize that my first row was a heading, so we are going to fix that. So now we're going to transform the data and enter, and then inside the Power Query. And first thing first, I just want to make sure I fix the heading, because definitely I don't want to go with column 1, column 2 as a heading. So let me just quickly fix that. I'm going to use my first row as a heading, as a header, and there we go. So it's going to take a couple of seconds, and it has loaded. So now I have made my first row as a headline, as the header of the table. So now what I want to do is I want to map out. So what I want to do is I want to see how the sentiments of the news are distributed depending on the topic. So for that, I want to have another column that indicates the sentiment of the news. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to derive sentiment of the particular news based on its headline. So for that, it's really, like I've said, it's super easy to consume Azure Cognitive Services in Power BI. So all I have to do is go and select AI Insights. And once I've selected it, it's going to take, again, a couple of seconds to load in. And there we go. So at the moment, Power BI just supports the 4 cognitive services, that being tag images, extract key phrases, detect languages, and score sentiment. So since I want to get the sentiment of the particular news, I'm going to go with this function, and I want to pass the headline of my news as a value. So the sentiment of the news is going to be derived based on its headline. So let me just pass in. Values of a column as an input, and the value is going to be the headline, and everything is going to be the default. And let me just hit apply. So it's just going to take a couple of seconds again to load everything. We have a warning: the evaluation was cancelled, because this is a warning that we can ignore for the moment. So yeah, it's just going to take a couple of seconds again to load everything. So under the hood, what is happening is Azure Cognitive. So we are passing our headline to the function, and it is making a call to the text analysis text analysis API under Azure Cognitive Services, and that is what is giving us the output. So now seems like we have the output. So at the end of the table, we can see that we have a new column, which is called cognitive services dot score sentiment, which is basically the sentiment score of this news based on its headline. So the value is between 0 and 1. So if the value is closer to 1, it means that the sentiment that the news carries is more positive. And if it's closer to 0, then it means that the sentiment that it carries is negative. So just to make it a little more intuitive, let me quickly add in a column. Actually, before adding a column, I see that we have one warning. So the query contains untyped columns. Okay, seems like Power BI was not able to determine the type of content here. So let me just fix that. Let me go with decimal number. And again, it's going to take a couple of times to transform it. Okay, a couple more seconds. So once we have, okay, so now that we have score sentiment, we have changed the type of score sentiment. Actually, let me just rename the column as well, just so it's a little easier to read in. And now that we have score sentiment, so I just want to quickly add in a column, so I want to add a conditional column. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it sentiment. And I'm going to use score sentiment value for if else condition. So what I'm going to do is if my score sentiment is greater than 0.5, then I'm going to say this news is positive. Let me add in another clause. If it's equal to 0.5, then I'm going to lean in towards neutral. And if it's not, so if it's basically smaller than 0.5, then I'll call it negative, just so it's a little more intuitive. And let me save it. So once we have these data loaded, I'm going to save it. And well, while it's loading things, let me just quickly open up Power BI Desktop, because I really like creating reports in Power BI Desktop just because it's way too flexible there. So once, okay, so it's still loading, and I think, okay, there we go. So since it has already loaded, let me just save and close it. Okay, seems like, so yeah, it's going to take a couple of seconds to save and close it. Until then, let me just get a couple of things set up in Power BI Desktop. Let me close it. Actually, I need to have the data flow to work. Here, let me save this data flow as news data and hit save. So again, this is going to take a couple of seconds to save, refresh now. And alrighty, so while this data is being refreshed, let me just go in here in Power BI Desktop, and I just want to import my data flow. So I'm going to go with Power BI, sorry, not the data. I think I went on with the data sets. Not this one. I want to go with Power BI data flows. So it's going to it's going to connect to my Power BI services. So just make sure while you're working side by side with Power BI Desktop and Power BI services, you are logged in with same credentials. So now I can see inside Power BI data flows, I can see I have 3 data flows, and the workspace that I had made was news demos. So I'm going to go with that one, news data, and the table that I want to extract is query. So let's give it a couple of seconds for the preview to load, and we can see the data here. So let me just load in that data. For the moment, let me just discard the changes. So it will take a couple of seconds again to load all the query, to load all the data that is inside the query table. Okay, there we go. So let me just check in the data that we have just to make sure if everything is imported correctly. And seems everything looks good. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to map out the topic of the news with its sentiment. So for that, let me just create a quick visualization. Guess I'll go with the stacked bar chart. And what I want to map out are I want to have topic as the axis, and maybe go with source as lessened. Yeah, it's not source, actually, sentiment as lessened. And then I'm going to use the count of sentiment as the value. So now, as you can see, I can clearly, so the insight that I can get from this data is, so if I look into the economy, look into this visualization, I can see that all the news that lied under the under the topic economic has a few negative sentiments to it, a lot of neutral sentiment to it. Those news under Microsoft has a lot of negative sentiment to it, few neutral sentiment to it, and and few positive sentiment. Same goes for Obama. We have a lot of news that had a neutral sentiment associated with it and few positive. And with Palestine, we have one negative sentiment associated with it and one neutral. So in this way, we can get a really good insight. So we can use AI insights, as we like to call it in Power BI, to enhance our data and gain more powerful insights out of our data. So let me quickly, and you can also add in more, you can also like stack this query with more AI insights. So if I just go in and hit on edit, if I just go and edit the data again, so again, I can just go, and if I just want to add a few more AI insights, then all I have to do is click on AI insights, and then well, it's taking a couple of seconds to load in. Longer than it usually does. Actually, while it's being loaded, let me just quickly go through. Let me just open up another app, just so I can give a quick. So while this is being loaded, let me just go over other AI capabilities that Power BI comes in integrated with, which are really, really cool. So I'm just going to go through a couple of examples that I already have in. So one of the really interesting AI capabilities that comes in with Power BI, and you do not even need premium license for that, is so let me just go through the report. And it helps you to detect. So if I go, it helps you to detect outliers in your data. So let me just hit edit. So for the moment, this just works with time series data. So if I go in the analytics pane and look into the find anomalies, and if I go into the analytic pane, then I should be able to see find anomalies data. So what it does, it helps you to automatically detect outliers in your data, detect any fraud value in your data, and it also gives you a very intelligent explanation on why this is an outlier. So in this case, as you can see, it says that revenue was unexpectedly low on 2015. So if you look at the trend in 2010, we have it around 200 so basically, between 2010 and 2014, the data were between 200 to 220, but in 2015, it just dropped in drastically. So that is why it is considering it as an outlier. So you can also set boundaries. So you can set boundaries by just adjusting the sensitivity. So finding anomalies is one of the really interesting AI capabilities that comes in integrated with Power BI, and it works with all the standard license. And next, another really interesting AI capability that again comes under standard license is the Qna Visual. So what it does is it allows you to ask a question, and the answer is going to be on a visual format. So in this case, I can ask like any questions. So I have a couple of suggestions here, like what is the average per score by city. So if I click on that, so this is going to give me a response or answer as a visualizations, which is also a really, really interesting feature of Power BI. And another really, really interesting feature is the auto ML. But before I go into that, let me just quickly go over, seems like our data is loaded. So let me just show you how you can stack up more AI insights on top of your query. So what I can do is hit on AI insights. So earlier we used the score sentiment cognitive services function. So now I want to go with extract key phrases. So again, it's taking a couple of seconds to load in. So let me just wait for it to load. For some reason, it's taking way too longer than it normally does. All right, so while it's being loaded, let me quickly go through another workspace. Maybe switch to Titanic demo. All right. Actually, let me just go through the AutoML and then again come back to the AI insights. So AutoML is another AI capability that Power BI comes in integrated with, and for this you will need a premium license. So I need to go inside my data flow, and if I go inside my data flow, so I have just imported Titanic data here. So if I go on the machine learning model, I already have one pre-trained model, but I can add a couple more models. So what I need to give in is I just need to give a query, and then I need to like give the value or the column name of data that I want to be predicted. So maybe I want to predict, I don't know, maybe I'll go with survived. And if I hit a next, so here what I'm saying is I want to train a model that predicts the value of survived, which is basically in this data, survives means whether the passenger survived during Titanic or not. So again, it's going to take a couple of seconds to load in. For some reason, Power BI is being super slow today. Normally, it just used to take like 1 to 2 seconds. Alrighty, so now that I've selected a column to predict, the next thing I need to do is I need to choose a model. So it already like gives you suggests, like based on the data that you're trying to predict, it suggests one of the best models that will work for you. For this one, I'm gonna go with. Actually, since I think I didn't change the type, this is more. I think it's more like a general classification problem. So I'm gonna go with general classification for this one. And there we go. So it already suggests me a couple of features or a couple of columns that I can use as features here. So as you can see, the feature, actually I'm not going to go with passenger ID, but the feature the column which is survived has outcome. It's the outcome column, so it's not being selected. The name has too many distinct values, so maybe we do not want to use it as a feature. And a lot of other columns like parts, ticket, fare, cabin, embarked has a very low correlations or just have too many distinct values. So we do not want to have that as a feature. So it just suggests you like features that you can go on with to train your model. And then once you like select the data you want to study, then you can just name your model. Maybe I'll just call it Titanic. And you can select the time training time that you want to give. The more training time that you give, the better your model is going to be. For now, I think I'll just give it like 86 minutes and save and train it. So obviously it's going to take a lot of time to train everything. So while the ML model is being trained, I can also see like once the ML model is already trained, I'll get a report. I'll get a detailed report. So I already have trained one model, so I'll just go ahead and select the report there. And well, I mean, this is taking way too much time to load. Hopefully it works out. All right, there we go. So the report that once your model is trained through AutoML, the report that you get looks along the line of these. Loading the data. It's going to take a couple of seconds. Okay, there we go. So it gives you a detailed report on how the model performed, the accuracy of the model, correctly classified, how many test data it was able to correctly classify, how many data were incorrectly classified, and then you can also like see the training details. So it just gives you. So it is super easy to like train your ML model through Power BI, and you can also like apply the models to all of the data inside your data flow. So it just gives you a really good insight on how the training was done, the accuracy of your model, and everything in between. So that's a really cool feature that we have under the premium license. So now coming back to the AI insights and how you can stack up more cognitive services inside your data is, so earlier we had a derived score sentiment. So now I want to use the extract key phrases as function. So under the hood, it again makes a call to the text analysis API and gives in the value that we fetch, and then it's going to give the extracted key phrases as an output. So again, I'm going to use my headline value as an input. So I'm going to apply that. So it's going to take a couple of seconds to load. So this function is going to take a little longer than the score sentiment function. So we might have to wait for a little longer. All right. Let's give it 1 or 2 more seconds, and hopefully it won't take that much long time like it did earlier. Alrighty, so now I should have a few columns here. So now I have a Cognitive Services extract key phrases column. So it has extracted all the important key phrases from my headline. And so it comes, so it gives you like 2 columns. One is Cognitive Services dot extract key phrases, and next is Cognitive Services dot extract key phrases dot key phrase. So the only difference here is in this format. So here the key phrases are separated with comma, and here it's separated in different rows. So based on how you want to consume it, you can select either of the rows. For now, I am just going to delete this row, and since it has duplicated a lot of my rows, I can just remove my duplicated rows and go on about analyzing my data. So that is how you can. So I think I'm running out of time here. So in this way, you can basically use Azure Cognitive Services inside Power BI. So at the moment, not all Azure Cognitive Services are integrated in Power BI. So if you want to use more Azure Cognitive Services, you can directly access it. You can make API calls. So for that, you will need to have Azure Cognitive Services subscription, but you can invoke that custom function and make the call to the API through Power Query itself. So there's a lot of so in that way, you will be able to integrate your Azure Cognitive Services and Power BI.